Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this session on promoting the international dimension as part of the high-level event on the role of regions and cities in delivering high-quality apprenticeships for all. I just want to thank all of the organizers for this very timely event, given the spotlight that all of these social, economic, environmental challenges are putting on apprenticeships, vocational educational training, and how much we can capitalize that in our international, national, regional, local efforts. So my name is Karen Maguire. I'm coming from the OECD's Local Employment and Economic Development Program. I'll be moderating this session. Just to say that the work on the LEAD program that looks at vet and apprenticeships really considers both how they contribute to local development and then how local and regional stakeholders are really on the front lines as champions making this all work. So tomorrow you'll hear more from the chair of that committee about this, but let's start moving from the local to the global, which is the purpose of this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. So first, I'd like to welcome Ben Bruyndonckx. Ben is coordinator of international mobility projects. I see he's joining. There we go. Ben, nice to meet you. Coordinator of International Mobility Projects in Vocational Educational Training in Connectief in Flanders. So welcome to the stage. I'd also like to welcome Gillian Coughlan. Gillian, welcome to our stage. She's member of the Cork County Council and the European Committee of the Regions, but also a professor of history as a daily profession. And then also Cesare Onestini, director of the European Training Foundation, but also a number of years working in a wide range of education and training cooperation projects, even beyond, well beyond EU borders. So thank you, all three of us, for joining us today. I think we're going to start with Ben. Ben, if you have a lot of experience in coordinating international mobility projects, and I'm just curious if you could help explain to the audience a little bit more about what you think are the particular challenges and successes for the local regional partners you're working with. What are some of the things tips and tricks we should keep in mind based on your experiences? Thanks, Ben.
Well, coordinating a project like this is like the Chinese boards and keeping them above, making them not fall. Maybe I should explain what I do a bit, because if not, it's a bit difficult to understand. Connectief as an organization is not a sending organization, and we are not an intermediary organization as known, like you pay and then they foresee work placements for you and they foresee residence for you. That's not what we do. What I do, or what Connectief does, is we write projects in which the Flemish schools can participate, and I provide them money to send out to the students, and I coordinate. I'm a bit the spider in the web, the broker between the Flemish partners and the foreign partners. What is very important? Well, you have to know your partners. You have to get to know your partners, invest time in it. You have to see also that the people you work with are motivated people. That counts for everything, of course, but it even counts more in this field. If you are sending young people abroad that are not motivated in doing so, or if you start a process with them that are with those people that are not motivated in doing so, then, well, a partner is going to look for a work placement. The work placement is found. You get back to the youngster. He says, okay. And 1 month later, when he or she has to go away, then she said, well, no, I don't feel like it. So don't work with people like that, because it's very bad. It makes you look bad, and it makes the project bad. But it is important to form partnerships on a local level, on a international level, and exchange information between them. Don't do it on your own. It's easier to work together.
Great, thanks, Ben. I don't know if you want to expand a little bit on some of the other opportunities or challenges associated with trying to engage? You've made it very clear that you really need motivated partners and that it's sort of day in, day out. You have to really work hard. Any other suggestions for those who are trying to promote international mobility that you want to raise with the group?
You're working with young people, so you have to work with the media channels that are available to them, and you have to involve them as much as possible. That's one of my, what we say in good Flemish, dadas, my thing. You have to involve young people in what you do. Also, not only in mobility project, but also in KA2s and all that stuff. Involve them not only in the field of make them participate, but also give them a voice in the management of what you are doing. Listen to them in what you're doing, because we have a lot of ideas, but they're not so young and fresh as theirs. Especially for me with my gray hair. It is very nice also to listen to young people and get their input on stuff that you're doing, and you learn a lot from that. I think that's the most important message I want to give, not only for KA1, but also for KA2.
Great. Thanks so much, Ben. It's true that maybe it requires some upskilling and rethinking in some cases on the different youth media that are used. So thank you so much for that. Gillian, you have a lot of experience working directly in Ireland, but also at EU level, having functioned on a number of different committees and contributing to a number of different plans. And what do you think could be done more to support this international thinking in apprenticeships, whether it's mutual recognition of skills or supporting migrants or fostering mobility? I mean, do we have the right incentives in place to encourage us to think internationally?
Good morning, Karen, and good morning to my fellow panelists and to everybody watching. Yes, thank you for that question. Here in Ireland, we have just launched our action plan for apprenticeships 2021 to 2025, and our target is to recruit 35,000 apprentices over the next 5 years. So from my perspective, I suppose, the teacher as well as a public representative, we need to get over the traditional sort of perhaps blockages that are in people's minds as regards in apprenticeships. It needs to become more attractive to young people. And I certainly agree with what Ben said there. We need to meet young people at their level. And I think I must commend our own government here in Ireland for this plan. It certainly does that. It is spread out in a range of media channels, very user-friendly and very accessible for them. There will be one apprenticeship office, which I think is important as well. Often, apprenticeships and our education system can be very bureaucratic and people can feel lost. So to have a one-stop shop where they can find out what they need to do, where they need to go, that's very, very appealing, I think, to young people. Also, I suppose, as regards coming back to your question of mobility and making it international, we need to get more employers on board and recognising that the apprenticeship model is valuable to them. It is a pipeline. It is a pipeline of trained, highly skilled individuals coming into their companies. So I suppose to create synergies between the employers and the education system, and then us as policymakers and as thinkers, I think we certainly need to do that. And some of maybe the grease that will oil all of that could be, I think, the transition to digital. Okay, we need to incorporate more digital into our training frameworks. Also, language training. I think that there is a huge gap in the apprenticeship model, whereby, especially here in Ireland, we train our people mainly through English. Irish is often sometimes used as well, but there is not a core language element in any of the apprenticeships that I have researched. So I think it's essential really that we would integrate a language element into each of our apprenticeships, and that of course would create mobility. And the Erasmus program that is so successful at third level, I think again, if we could offer that to our apprentices, especially as our apprenticeships now are straddling the world of financial and fintech and all of that, that is an international globalization. That's what globalization means, is this cooperation across the networks. So language barriers certainly need to be broken down, in my opinion, there. The mutual recognition of skills frameworks is essential. From what I understand, it is rather a minefield. I'm sure, Ben, you must have a lot of that to deal with a lot of that minefield. But I was interested to know that we say the European Union does not have a formal reciprocal arrangement with, say, even the USA or Australia. If a plumber or electrician leaves Bandon, County Cork here for the USA or Australia, they do not necessarily, they will have to go through some accreditation there. So really, in order for a mobile workforce, to be created, an internationally mobile workforce to be created, we do need to break down these barriers. And for me, it's about mutual recognition of skills frameworks, language, and digitalization. I think the digitalization piece could really facilitate the other two as well.
Great, thanks, Gillian. So some real concrete guidance on what we need to do to perhaps rethink some of our approaches in order to facilitate and create the capacity for this mobility amongst students. And I think we'll talk a little bit more later also about maybe some of the opportunities that digital has opened up. And I think your call on Erasmus, I think Commissioner Schmidt said at the very beginning of the sessions that this is also an area that we need to do a lot more on, thinking about this international mobility. Cesare Onestini, you have been working at the European Training Foundation with a number of countries on this. And I mean, what would you say are the unique challenges and opportunities for some of these partner countries with respect to this internationalization? And there's a role that VET can play with respect to their immigration challenges or supporting internationalization of SMEs, just broader local development strategies. What are your thoughts on some of these questions?
Thank you very much. Indeed, at the European Training Foundation, we work with countries outside of the European Union, and we act as a bridge between their interest and the interest of the European Union countries. And we see that on the areas of apprenticeship, there is a growing interest, a growing demand. And if I can maybe cast the net a bit wider, we see that the interest is well beyond the typical young student in their first training cycle, but it's well beyond. It's more also about adult upskilling and reskilling. We see even before COVID and even more now with the COVID impact that there is a growing demand. And there is a growing demand in both sense, both from employees trying to retrain and reskill, but also we see that there is more dynamism in SMEs, in the creation of small and medium enterprises. People in their 50s who lose their job, create a small business, and they need some expertise, they need the skills, and they look at the market. And that's where there is a growing gap. And especially in some of our partner countries in the Western Balkans or in the Mediterranean, we see that the impact of immigration from those countries as well increases even more this need to look at different alternatives. And this is very much in the common interest of the European partners and the partner countries we work with. And there, I think, to go back to the theme of the topic today, the role of regions and cities is key, because they are the ones who have who feel the pulse. They know what's happening. They can connect these local actors, and it's a lot of small acts of networking that add up to the real quality apprenticeships. And I think what the two colleagues said before are great examples of this, because it's not so much the need for Europe-wide policies and programs. We have them, they're important. Erasmus is doing some great things, and the commissioner recalled that framework. It's essential. But then the difference between a good offer and a less good offer, it's about the quality of these connections that happen more locally. So paradoxically, internationalization, it's about what you do locally. And if we look at this internationalization dimension, we see that, first of all, internationalization now is at home. No region or city is lacking international ties, partnerships, twinning, or other. Business bring this internationalization. Immigration bring this at home. But also, there are more and more avenues, and Erasmus will open even more doors in the year to come to then connect your local apprenticeship ecosystem to the wider networks. And there is one initiative that we support, which was also mentioned by the Commission, which is this creation of focus on centers of vocational excellence. And I think identifying such centers, both in the European Union and outside, but excellence in the sense of centers which are inclusive, which open up to regional and local development, and connecting them to learn from each other, learn best practice, see what they can do with the partners, it's a great asset. So I think this is where we at the European Training Foundation see great potential. There is growing demand, wider demand, but we need to connect it with the offer and supporting the offer on the other side.
Great, thank you, Cesare. Just maybe a couple of key points about the sort of, to be strong internationally, you need to be strong locally. I think that's really an important message for everyone, because that's where this, like you said, paradoxically, that's what makes the local effective at those connections. I think also this,
Karen,
Karen,
can I make an example of that? How to enlarge my local and international network is if I go to a shop and the person that is serving me in that shop, I went to an electrical shop lately, and the person was very young, and I said, "Oh, are you a student?" "Yes." "Oh, would you be interested in going abroad and doing an internship abroad?" And he said, "Oh, yes, that might be interesting. And what is your school?" "Oh, the school is this." "Well, give me the telephone number of the teacher in your school. I'll make a phone call." And that makes the ball rolling, because that school wasn't active at all in the international field, and now slowly they're starting to this is a possibility. So it starts not only locally, it starts with the person yourself, what you're doing, and keeping an open mind when you step into a shop and start talking to people. So promote it, carry the flag wherever you go.
I'd like to agree
Please,
there
Gillian.
with you, Ben. I think that's very important. Yes, recently I responded to the Commission's Digital Education Action Plan, and I mentioned very strongly there the importance of digitalisation, and as part of the digital transition, the importance of those skills. But however, at the end of the day, all teaching is going to come back to people, and all training is going to come back to people. And the scaffolding that an apprenticeship can supply to somebody, and we're talking about the international dimension here, particularly maybe somebody from a migrant background or who's not so au fait with the norms in the country. The scaffolding that an apprenticeship program can provide for that, and of course the financial incentives as well, are so very attractive, and I think it really must be hit home. But I think what Ben said there, that one-to-one, the scaffolding, the support, the encouragement, that's really what is important, and that's education at the end of the day. That's the one-on-one, and I suppose really the key there is, and you said it there, Ben, the career guidance teachers at school, to open up their minds to the worlds of apprenticeship. I think that's really very, very important. I think we would all agree, there is somewhat still of a stigma, or not stigma, but there's a block in people's minds about apprenticeships. That has to go. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Gillian. And just actually picking up on that point, what do you think international mobility could actually make this more attractive to a wider range of students, if they saw that this is actually an area that gives them many opportunities within where they live and even beyond? Is this something that could be an attractiveness tool for public awareness raising to get students to think about?
If I can, on mobility, I think we have seen what mobility has done for universities. We take it as a good thing, and I think we need to learn from that. We need to learn that mobility brings with it a number of things. Brings with it a search for quality, because you start comparing and you start matching up what is that you learned in one or the other institutions. You bring that experience, so quality is a direct result. Personal growth, and we talk about soft skills and all of that. That's what you learn in the journey, and the journey, the more complex the journey, the more enriching it will be at the end. But then for the vocational training aspect, I think we need to recognize that we need to be more accompanying better this process. And that's where I think the new Erasmus allowing for longer period of mobility, so that we can bring in maybe some of those aspects of language learning that Gillian mentioned, or some of those aspects of connecting institutions which don't have the practice. A university has an international office, a school of trades usually doesn't, or we'll have to develop it. So I think this kind of longer perspective will bring this opportunity. And the last plea I want to bring in, which is a little bit the experience of ETF, is that internationalization nowadays is global. And I think it was mentioned, Europe is an important horizon. I work for the European Union. I'm a great believer in intra-EU mobility, but I think Europe being open to third countries, and for ETF countries in the Western Balkans, in the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Partnership or so, is even more enriching, because they bring in traditions which are maybe even more, let's say, different from what the average student or the average trainee has been exposed before, and therefore will bring in also different types of learning back to their experience and careers.
Great. And then also, I think, we've talked about youth, but Cesare, as you also mentioned, we need to think also about what this means for lifelong learning older workers, because the number of transitions people will have in their careers is also changing and accelerating. And so we need to think about how to speed up, in a sense, some of these and digital tools. And I know we have some questions that were submitted in advance here about how we think digitalization is going to change, or the accelerated transition to digital in our workplaces, and for the ability to engage and share in teaching and curriculum. So I don't know if you, any of the panelists, want to maybe jump in a little bit on what digitalization and this accelerated digital transition will mean for supporting this international mobility and maybe these international exchanges with respect to curriculum.
Well, I think, okay, Ben, do you want to go there first? Okay. Well, I think, yes, again, it's, the digitalization of the economy will provide challenges, and jobs will be lost. And I think it's very important that we face up to that. It has to be said very, very clearly. People's traditional employments will no longer be relevant. So they need to upskill, and the economy and society needs to help them in that respect. So as Cesare said earlier, we as policymakers need to provide those structures for people in their 40s, 50s and beyond, and to make it easy for them. So the digital native people becoming au fait with using online platforms, that should make it, the first tentative steps a little bit easier, filling out the application form, finding out about the course. But again, it will come back to, as we mentioned earlier, going into the office, meeting the person who will be your mentor, or setting you into the training sessions or into the training school. So I think at the end of the day, it does come back to the expertise of the individuals who are involved. But the digital transition certainly will require reskilling and upskilling. And I think that it provides opportunities, but there will certainly be challenges for economies as well.
Ben, I think you wanted to jump in on this. Oh. Ben, I think we just need to unmute there. There we go.
No, it was muted by the technical service. I couldn't unmute. Gillian is completely right. But there is a but, and we have to think about the target group. Still, if you look at apprenticeship, and specifically in the Belgian context, but also dual learning and the people involved in dual learning. If I look at the target group I'm working with, and if I listen to the teachers that are working with them and have been a lot of, it was very difficult for them to get the students online, to give online courses. It was extremely difficult. They lost a lot of students in that way. So there is a long way to go to involve young people, certainly in these target groups, into that process. Also because we are using tools that they're not used to work with, and there is a fear as well, a fear of being online, being on a screen. So there is not only work to do in well, we have to offer, but we have to listen. What do you need? What can you use? What can you apply? Small steps. We developed a small approach, a bit based on e-twinning, but more simple, to bring students and teachers internationally together in, for instance, WonderMe, just to discuss things that they have developed. I did it this way, you did it that way. Focusing on the vet part of what they're doing, not on the cultural education or mathematics, or really the vet part, the professional part or the technical part. And you see, it's the fear of going online and using a different language, and there is language again, in an area. Flanders is quite known for being multilingual, but even in our area, it's still difficult. So yes, digitalization, but don't think it will go in one step. It needs time, and the one-to-one approach, there you are again, is very important as well.
If I can, Karen, on this digitalization, I just want to add just two small elements. One is that we have done a survey of many countries to look at how this COVID online learning has impacted the systems. And we have seen that one of the major differences is between those systems which had already developed a competence-based approach to learning and those who haven't. What do I mean by this? I mean that you can indeed put your lessons online, and you can put your homework and or your assignments online and all of that. But if your learning pedagogy behind it has not moved to what kind of skills you want to transmit or so, online is even more difficult. Because you lose this social dimension which somehow can complement or can assist. So I think there is, I know it's a bit boring, it's going to, curriculum, it's going to qualification frameworks and all of this, but we have seen that work, where it was more advanced, then even the quality of the individual online learning was better. And then the second elephant in the room with digitalization and online learning is social exclusion. We have seen that whilst for some this is a great way of learning even better, for a bigger majority, this online environment meant even more obstacles and real kind of lagging behind compared to some of their peers. So whilst we should support and encourage the learning that we all had collectively through the virtual scenarios we were forced into over the last year, we just need to really address this question of inclusion.
Great, thanks. So opportunities, but of course some areas of caution, and to not be over optimistic on what we can achieve in some of those areas. And I think it transfers into all forms of education as well. Some of those challenges and inclusion. We had another question that was submitted in advance, a little bit about building capacity to think more internationally in apprenticeships. And Ben, a moment ago, you were able to give some really concrete examples of that very local brokering, networking role and outreach to build that knowledge and capacity. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in on we think we can do in all types of places, in urban areas, in rural areas, to really build this international thinking. And is there maybe a more provocative question? Does this international thinking actually for some of those regions then mean that they're going to focus on getting people trained up who are then going to leave? So I don't know if anyone wants to pick up on any of these issues.
I can start and then pass the ball to the colleagues. I think, as you know, many regions are looking more and more at these concepts of smart specialization. They look around and they say, what is our advantage, at the city level, the regional level or so. We have done a number of a number of exercises of this kind, and we see that the skills dimension usually is not really integrated in this thinking, or it's too poorly integrated. So you look and you decide, okay, our strength is because there is a niche on, I don't know, biotech, or there is a niche on these. But if you don't bring in the connection to what kind of skills you have, what kind of retraining and what kind of work you need to do with the local business, with the local providers of training and the local authorities, then it's very difficult to move from the goals to the practice. So I would say for those who are listening to us, who have roles in regional and city planning, I think it's very important to bring in this element of skills assessment and skills needs when we perform these smart specialization processes, which then have to translate into the reality of individuals and what they can contribute to this goal. So that's something we really see in different countries, from the work we have been doing in the Western Balkans, in North Macedonia, to some of the work we've been doing in Tunisia, but then we connect it to the work that's happening in the European Union. And as you know, this is an area where this regional development is really emphasized by a lot of the national policies of our member states.
Great, thanks. And I, reiterate, a lot of the OECD work has highlighted this point as well, that it's been an undervalued part of different regional innovation, smart specialization strategies, and it's really missing a big share of the contribution that the local workers can make, and this sort of sometimes high-tech bias misses all of those skills that actually the firms are looking for and are a constraint to regional growth. Ben, you wanted to jump in on that.
Well, it starts again at the local level. You have to send out, or the school wants to send out an apprentice, but that apprentice is working currently also in an enterprise. So you have to convince the enterprise to that the person working there, the apprentice, can go abroad for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever. That's not always easy, because his work is learning there, but working as well. So then you have to use tricks like, well, it's not a trick, it's the truth. Well, he's going or she's going there abroad, but she is also a spy for you. So she or he can steal with her eyes, with his eyes, to see what can we learn. And you have to ask your apprentice, well, be my spy, bring me new ideas. So don't learn only for you, also learn from me. And those are little tricks you can use to do that. So it's again what Cesare says, you can work on a high level and develop all the policies, but you have to get them translated on the work floor in a company, in a small company with one apprentice. Well, I need him this summer to do this and this and this. Well, yes, but maybe he can learn. It's also payment, continuing payment or not, stuff like that. So that has to be discussed on a local level. Whatever policy you have, that's the translation you have to do in the end.
I love the way that Ben gets into the nitty-gritty, right down onto the shop floor. Yes, I think I agree, and it is, as you say, Ben, easy for policymakers to write policies. It's very easy to write policies. And as I referenced the Irish new policy recently, and while I think it's very good, there are gaps, and it has referenced that the public sector should take on new apprentices. I think that hasn't been a tradition here in Ireland whereby the public sector would take on apprentices. I don't know for sure, but it hasn't been a big feature of apprenticeships in Ireland. And in Ireland, as you know, we've got a lot of heritage buildings. So heritage skills, for example, that is one of the only sectors where somebody who is a stonemason or a heritage stonemason may get the opportunity to practice his or her skills. So that is, I suppose, an area where we can increase capacity. The target for the public sector is 7,500 apprenticeships, which again, if that is leveraged, that would be a marvellous scenario here for Ireland, for our young people and for people who may be retraining, upskilling. Otherwise, I suppose capacity, I agree with Ben as well. When I was doing a little bit of research for this, I understand that at the moment in Ireland, apprentices are only paid by their employer. So really, the government provides the training, but the payment comes from the employer. I think we need to the government should carve back a little bit of that time. That old phrase, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if the government is paying an element of that stipend, then perhaps the language element could be clawed back. That time could be clawed back in the training centre, or as Ben says, sending them to France or Spain for 3 weeks, because the government would pay that amount of money, maybe for a replacement worker in the factory floor. That kind of brokering can be done. So I think we need to be flexible and agile in the apprenticeship sector, and as Ben said earlier as well, and Cesare, listen to our clientele and listen to our employers. And try to make the best of both for the future of work in the European Union and across the world.
Thanks, Ben. So I guess we can talk about industrial espionage or knowledge transfer, whichever frame you want to put on that. But it's true that
whatever sells.
Okay, so we'll work on that. But and then Gillian, again, this interesting about incentives and what can be done to build support in order for this international mobility, which benefits different stakeholders in different ways, and different levels of government and firms in different ways. I noticed that there's actually some chats that have been coming in, so I just wanted to also go into some of the questions. And one of them, Gillian, is for you about mutual recognition of skills framework, and how you think, do you think the curriculum should be versatile enough to adapt to the upcoming needs in different countries? And would this be easy? So how to sort of juggle these different challenges and versatility and sort of mutual recognition frameworks? I don't know if you have any thoughts on this question from the audience.
I'm sure it would not be easy, but anything that, things that are worth doing are never easy. I suppose we would have to have broad frameworks for mutual recognition. It's not every country is the same. Not every country runs the same sort of system. So we recognize that, and we're united in diversity here in Europe, and we recognize the diversity across the world. However, if we want to allow our skilled people to be mobile, and I suppose I think about this very much on a developmental sort of platform as well. We've seen, during the global pandemic, there were countries that had very little access to basic things like soap, for the washing of hands. If we are really invested in improving the world for everybody, then we need to share our skills across the world. So if bureaucracies get in the way of that, that's what I mean by the mutual recognition of skills. Bureaucracy shouldn't get in the way of that. If somebody wants to work in India or wherever the case may be, then that should be made as easy as possible for them. Obviously, recognizing standards and standards of work and whatnot. But that's what I mean by that. And if we had broad parameters to do that, I think it would enhance mobility and create perhaps a little bit more equality, whereby similarly, the person who's trained in India should be able to come and work in Europe. I know there are other aspects of legislation that to deal with that, but as regards just the mutual recognition of skills, I think that should be able to be done.
Thanks, Gillian. Does anyone else want to jump in on this mutual recognition question? Any experience you've had?
On this, as I mean, we somehow we see what needs to be done, but we also need to recognize how much we have amongst European Union countries. I mean, obviously, if we start looking at countries outside of the European Union and that type of recognition, all sorts of other issues come into play. But there is still work to be done even amongst us. And I think that's where the Commissioner and the work that the Commission is promoting with the skills agenda and this idea of skills pacts and all of that really brings in this element of moving from some declarations of recognitions and some frameworks and some important work that has been done by the qualification authorities to realities where I think the oil in the machinery is about mobility. It's about individuals going. It's about trainers as well. So mobility not just for the trainees, but also trainers. And it's about creating these networks. So I think I'm let's say more of a half a glass full than empty when it comes to the work that we have. And obviously, when we look beyond the EU, then I can see there the challenges and the need to work. There, I know, for example, that there are some interesting examples, for example, with World Skills, these kind of competitions on the global level about which bring out this question, you know, how do we compare like with like? And it's a fun way through the competition angle to look at this, but the questions are serious, and I think we in Europe, if we manage to bridge some of the gaps between us, between systems that we know are so different from, you know, the system, the Irish experience or the German or even the Italian where I'm based at the moment, I think there we have a very good basis to do even more.
Ben, please, and you want to jump in?
2 points maybe on this. One, I think we can learn from the apprenticeship system as such a lot about curricula and how to learn, because it's a lot more difficult in an apprenticeship system to teach somebody something because the enterprise is going to follow a program as much as it can. A small construction firm is not going to start doing cellars when the student has to learn cellars, because I'm sorry, we don't have cellars to do at this moment. We need to do a roof or whatever. So that adaptability is inherent in the apprenticeship system. So those are things that could feed in the more policy on the policy level discussion. Secondly, if we're talking about recognition of skills, it also has to do with if you're talking about mobilities, there is a growth line there as well. You can start with sending a class with a teacher to do something abroad for like a week. You can start with sending out individuals in a group for 2 weeks. That's what I do, to work abroad in groups mixed from different schools and different professions. So they'll, even in their peer group, they have to get to know each other and deal with the differences. And then you can start going for the longer apprenticeships abroad. But it's a growth line. The question of the skills recognition for the short periods, it's not so important. I mean, it's what there it's ouvrir les soupapes, what you say in French. You open up the valves, their perspective, and then you go to next stages. So it's not, mobility is not in apprenticeship or in any other field. It's a growth line. It's not something that you can discuss in general, because it depends on what you do, what they are taught abroad, what they have learned abroad, and then you have to see, well, what will I do with this? The perspective is different. So that's my practical input again.
I suppose
Great.
just that I absolutely accept that, but it's not so theoretical. I mean, here in Ireland now we have, and getting back to what Cesare said earlier as well, you know, we're all a very happy European family, and we are, you know, we still work to do, as has been said. But with Brexit on the horizon here in Ireland, we have an international border on our island, and our nearest neighbour is now outside of the European Union. And as you know, we all suffered an economic crash 10 years ago, but here in Ireland in particular, the construction sector suffered the whole country suffered an extraordinary crash, but there were a lot of construction workers who were unemployed, and they travelled to, many of them travelled to England, following patterns that had been established for 200 years. Now, will our qualified apprentices, maybe not today, but say in 3 or 4 years' time, will those qualifications be recognised in London or in Luton or in Manchester? It's not a theoretical thing here for us in Ireland. We have an international border now on our island, and these sorts of things will matter. So I think mutual skills recognition is important, and the bureaucracies can put blocks in the way, for people literally up and down the road in Northern Ireland, people working in Dublin and living in across the border. So it is important that we would keep those policy, while the shop floor and the factory floor is very, very important, and the apprenticeship training, where we're coming from. But when they are trained, where will they get jobs and where can they work? That's important.
Great, thanks. And I think so. We have on this mutual skills recognition, we have a cup that's half full. We have steps we can take, and in some cases, it's maybe not as critical. It's a short-term activity, and it starts to build up. And I think also this issue that Ben, you raised of, in a sense, creating a ladder, and also starting to have champions, because one of the last questions we had on the list here was issues about how to promote more peer learning, etc. And there's nothing better than having a small firm or a former student or a policymaker or local official who's seen this to kind of be a champion. And I'm just curious if you have any other reflections on what we can do to support that peer learning to take advantage of these different international mobility opportunities.
I guess that it is important that you could form the networks. I mean, if we look at the European Union in the macro, we're working together. Here we are from all corners of Europe talking to each other. Similarly, at regional level, that networks are established, that employers are supported, that the trade unions identify skills shortages or places where there may be opportunities for further apprentice models, and that I suppose that the synergies, and to use that phrase, are created, whereby gaps are identified, courses are created or upskilled, and that the employers are ready then to take on, as I say, a pipeline of talent, which is guaranteed if this keeps generating. So I think the future is very bright for apprenticeships. I do think, however, we need to change attitudes a little. As a parent myself, I have I have students coming up who are coming up to that age of making that choice, and this piece of research has really opened my mind to encouraging them to look into the apprenticeship model, and that honestly is the case. I wouldn't, not that it wouldn't have come across my mind, but it certainly has highlighted the value to the student, to the young person, and to the economy. The practical value of it. So I really think we need to emphasise that to parents and to teachers, to career guidance teachers in particular.
Great, and I think so. We have a couple more minutes before this panel closes. So I just wanted to see if colleagues, you have any other sort of, as they say in French, les mots de la fin, or the sort of our closing thoughts or ideas before we break for lunch and people pick up again tomorrow in the high level panels.
I have just one word, which is to let you all know that we will be organizing, as European Training Foundation, a week-long discussion on starting on the 21st of June on building lifelong learning systems. We are bringing together some of the best experts from, we do it together with UNESCO, but from OECD as well, from the International Labour Office, from, indeed, as was mentioned, from different parts of Europe and countries. And this idea of peer learning, learning together, but looking at how all these different learning can contribute to systems which are green, sustainable, and how we can share the best practice. So for those of you interested, go to our website. You can register for free. The beauty of these virtual events is that we can host as many people want to join us. And I think it's going to be a good event to make these connections.
Great, thanks, Cesare. So everyone check that out. Ben, Gillian, any other final thoughts as we wrap up this panel?
Think outside the box. It's always the thing we have to do. Even if we opened up our box from nation states to Europe, and that's a good step. But we still need to continue to think outside of the box, especially when it comes to learning. If we look at how the young people currently learn, they're not so wary about digital stuff, but they use it in a different way. If they want to look something up, they go to YouTube. So why are we not presenting our teaching or doing our teaching in a YouTube way? It's just that's what we have to learn ourselves, because if not, the youth will just surpass us in their own way, and we will be trying to introduce policies, and they will say, well, what's this? So we really have to continue to listen to them.
Yes, I would echo that, listen, and be agile, be prepared to change, because the world of work is fast changing, and we need to be agile and to be prepared for that. And yet to provide the scaffolding and structures that students, young people crave as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Help us try to think a little outside the box, and hopefully some of this international mobility will bring fresh ideas to help us think even further outside the box. So thanks again for your time today and for sharing with our audience, who we can't see here, but we're in our little boxes for now. But hopefully someday soon we'll be able to get back to what, as Gillian said, that one-to-one contact. So thanks again to everybody for your great contributions today.
Thank you, Karen. Bye-bye.